we're not even a week after Trump winning the election, and Bitcoin has gone from roughly 70 to now 83 that we're talking about here. But I don't want to obsess too much about like what the price is at a specific moment in time, but it's more so what actually has happened and what we're probably on the doorstep of. And like you said, this it's been a theory. It's been talked about. Oh, nation states are eventually going to buy Bitcoin. Big companies are eventually going to buy Bitcoin. And it's more like, okay, El Salvador did it. Okay, MicroStrategy did it. Okay, this other tiny company bought a little bit. And it was just like, a little bit here and there. Okay, Bhutan is mining Bitcoin and they're keeping it. Like all these little things that they matter, but like they're pretty small. Now we're on the doorstep of the wealthiest, most powerful nation in the world. It seems like at the very least, it's going to be easy for them to say, hey, that I think it's roughly 200,000 Bitcoin that they own, that they're just going to say, we're not selling it, we're holding it. That seems like a super easy thing for them to do. And that would just say that's the beginning of our strategic Bitcoin reserve or stockpile. I think Trump likes the word stockpile. We'll see if he gets that to stick. But I think that's super easy. And even if they just do that, even if they just say we're holding the 200,000 Bitcoin that we have, we're not actively buying because let's just say they can't for some reason because it requires congressional approval. It's just too difficult. Let's just assume that. That would still be such a massive signal to the rest of the world that the United States is saying, hey, we are going to hold 200,000 Bitcoin for this foreseeable future. And you would have to assume they're going to actively start buying into that and adding to it at some point, even if they can't do it for some political reasons on day one. So, I mean, I think things switch from, not that long ago, if you brought up Bitcoin to an institutional investor, a financial advisor, a high net worth individual, a family office, they might have laughed at you and just said, it's kind of ridiculous. It's a Ponzi scheme. It has no cash flow, no earnings. The government's going to ban it, blah, blah. We know the whole list. And you would have been kind of laughed at. And now it's happened, gradually then suddenly, I think applies here for sure. There was, the ETF launches, BlackRock's behind it. BlackRock's making presentations about it. So that's like, those are big deals. But now I think we're approaching the point where all those people I just listed off, institutional investors, that means, insurance companies, pensions, endowments, those are the big ones, but hedge funds you could throw in there as well. High net worth individuals, family offices, financial advisors. Now we're getting to the point where all of them, I think, are going to have conversations and they're going to say, wait a minute, the US government just signaled to us that they're at least holding their $200,000 worth of Bitcoin for strategic reasons. And now you're telling me we own zero of this thing? Oh, and by the way, it's the best performing asset this year. It's the best performing asset last year and the best performing asset for 7 out of 10 calendar years, soon to be 8 out of 11. It's like, why do we not own some of this thing? And then you think about all those entities I listed off, most of them still are on zero. Most of them have not even said, let's dip our toe with a 1% allocation here. So you start to think about that. And then there's rumors on Twitter that there are nation states actively buying, like literally right now. Some people are throwing, and you never know, rumors could be false, but I saw some people saying, hey, this, there is a nation state actively buying. It's going to be announced soon. And to be honest with you, the price action would kind of make sense. Seeing this like pretty massive pump over the weekend, this doesn't seem like just one guy buying some Bitcoin and stopping. Like this seems like indiscriminate buying. And they just said, yeah, we know the price is going to run up, but we're putting a big position on here because we think, the difference between 70 and 80K is nothing in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, putting all that together. And then, like you said, huge credit to David Bailey and the Bitcoin Magazine team for getting in Trump's ear on this. There's another thread we could pull on if you want to, but like the hypothetical alternative world of if Trump and Pence got in 2020, we could probably have a whole show on that because I think Elon never buys Twitter. I think Trump never is incentivized to care about Bitcoin. So I think the way that it played out with Trump getting in now in 2024 is just like completely different world. I mean, the whole team he assembled, right? RFK, Tulsi, Vivek, JD Vance, Howard Lutnick, Elon being outspoken on his side, David Sachs, Silicon Valley billionaires. I don't think any of that stuff happens. Maybe some of it. Most of it does not happen if Trump and Pence get in 2020. So I think we're just in a completely different world now that things played out the way they did.
What do you think gets done in the Trump administration when it comes to those different, how it looks at Bitcoin?
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what actually gets done. Yeah, I'll speculate a little bit. Some of this, probably higher confidence than others, but I don't think we see a full just like removal of capital gains taxes on Bitcoin. I just have a hard time seeing that because these people in power still do care about what they would call financial stability. Like they don't want to see a flight out of the dollar denominated assets into Bitcoin. If Bitcoin could double, triple, quadruple from here, that's the crazy thing. It still is a drop in the bucket, really, compared to the dollar system. So that doesn't really threaten the dollar system. But if it happens too quickly, those powers that be could start to maybe worry that there's going to be a flight out of the dollar, and they don't really want that. So I don't think they want to signal and say, hey, Bitcoin's legal tender, it's on par with the dollar, zero capital gains taxes. I have a hard time seeing that happen. What I could see happen, and this actually was proposed in the Cynthia Lummis, Kirsten Gillibrand bill. I think they proposed it in 22 or 23. The keyword, it got proposed, so none of this got passed, but it still was a proposed bill. I think their number was somewhere around $200 that they said, if you're buying a round of beers, if you're buying dinner with your friends and the restaurant allows you to accept Bitcoin, allows you to pay in Bitcoin, there's no capital gains taxes, which is pretty nice because, let's say you buy a few beers. Do you really want to calculate that you have a $2.72 capital gain on that transaction? That's just like a headache for everybody. So that would be good. And then the government, if it gets used the right way, they're not going to miss out on a lot of capital gains if they just have that low threshold. But I think what they still want is, some guy or entity that made, literally hundreds of millions of dollars off Bitcoin. I think the government is still going to want a chunk of that. They still get capital gains off stocks. They still get capital gains off real estate. I don't think they're looking to just like give that all away on Bitcoin. But I don't think that's a huge problem. If you want Bitcoin to excel as a medium of exchange, you just have some sort of threshold for payments. I think that kind of solves that. And more importantly, I think what really we want to see from the government at large would be protections of self-custody, which Trump has said so far. And that's a shift away from what Trump and Mnuchin did in 2020. If you guys remember, there was this talk of everyone being deemed a broker. So it was like, oh, the hardware wallet manufacturer is a broker, and they're going to have to collect KYC information about all their clients. And, oh, if you can't collect it, then, you're operating illegally. And it was like a de facto ban on self-custody. So making sure that doesn't happen is critical. And this is similar, making sure everyone doesn't get deemed a money transmitter, because then it's like, oh, you have to have a license. You have to collect all this information. Oh, you can't do it. Then guess you can't operate. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. Protecting Bitcoin mining, we want to, protect that, make sure they don't have some crazy negative legislations or taxes, penalties on them, which again, Trump has said. So I think those are more likely to play out. I don't think there's a real threat to the government by them saying, yeah, you can self-custody your Bitcoin. I still believe they're going to monitor and make sure that centralized exchanges collect KYC information. And when someone sells Bitcoin on a centralized exchange, I absolutely believe the government is going to expect that person and the exchange to report that activity to the IRS. And if you have a big gain, you're going to pay your taxes. Like, I fully expect all of that to happen. But yeah, I don't think there's a huge threat to the government saying, yeah, you're allowed to self-custody your Bitcoin. Yeah, you're allowed to be a Bitcoin miner in the US. And in fact, we want you to be a Bitcoin miner in the US because it's good for employment and it's actually good for energy infrastructure, for developing renewables, for consuming wasted energy. I think that story is only in like the first inning of playing out. people like Daniel Batten, Pierre Rochard. There's a long list of people have been really doing a good job at telling that story. But I think we're just in the first inning of that Bitcoin energy connection playing out.
I would love for you to really quickly explain how this can be so explosive, or why Bitcoin can be so explosive, while touching on how the price of Bitcoin is determined.
If you want the answer to that question right there and you like that spicy clip, check it out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. But if you want the full interview in its entirety, all the spicy clips put together, and you're not going to want to miss it, believe me, then check that out here. Come on, we'll see you in there. Do it.